Hello everyone, how are we doing today? Good, I hope. I wanted to share a story, a tale, an adventure I guess, about a cat named Franz Kafka. Now before we get into it, there's a lot of conjecture on whether the story is true or not. It's probably not entirely true, but it's a really good story, so I think in the interest of humanity, it's best just to say it's true. But Franz Kafka, this is a cat that was born in Prague, I don't know, like 1883, something like that, and he died in Austria in 1924, 100 years ago. And for those of you who don't know, Franz Kafka was an author. His most famous works were The Trial and Metamorphosis. If you've not read those, stop watching this crap and go crack a book and read them, please. Anyway, at this time he was living in Berlin at the time of the story with a gal named Dora Diamant. Now, understand, Kafka was never married, never had kids, so this was just some broad he was living with. But as the story goes, and it's kind of known as today as the doll letters. Kafka was in the park, and there was a little girl, crying and searching frantically for a doll that she had lost. Kafka, being a good guy, helped search for the doll. Of course, they didn't find it. But Kafka said, "Hey, let's come back tomorrow and we'll look some more. Maybe we'll get lucky." So they returned the next day. Kafka, and presumably this little girl, who doesn't have a name. And much to, or no surprise, or much to Kafka and the little girl's chagrin, they did not find the doll. But that evening before the second day, Kafka had written a letter pretending that he was the little girl's doll. So that second day after they didn't find the doll, Kafka said, "Hey, I didn't find the doll, but I did find this letter that was from your doll." And he read it to her, and it basically said, hey, the doll had to go, it had some adventures to go on, but it would write some letters. And again, as the story goes, over the next few days, Kafka would write a new letter, and each day he'd meet the little girl at the park and would read the child these letters from her doll, which she just loved. And Kafka, having the gift of writing, I'm sure wrote these wonderful letters about the adventures that this doll was having. Well, on the last day before Kafka had to, I think, leave Berlin for a spell, he took the time to purchase a new doll and brought it to the little girl. And the little girl, of course, said, "Well, this isn't what my doll looks like." And he said, "Well, all those adventures that your doll had changed how it looked." The little girl, being a little girl, hugged the doll, thanked Mr. Kafka, and went about her life. Now, Kafka died later that year, I think I said at the ripe old age of 40. And as the story goes, at some point later, the little girl, now a young adult, found the doll in a box, and actually attached to the back side of the doll, or inside the doll, no one really knows, was a note from Kafka that basically said, "Everything you love will probably be lost, but in the end, love will return in another way," which is a lovely thing to write. Now, a lot of people have questioned the validity of this story because there's no record of any of these letters. Now, it's very possible that the little girl didn't keep the letters. As people do, they throw stuff away. There's no record of the doll. But you have to understand, during that time period, in the 30s, the Gestapo, that little girl most likely was probably Jewish. She could have ended up at a concentration camp as a young adult, and most of their materials were snatched up by the Nazis at that time. And any record, the story was always recounted, I believe, by Dora, his last girlfriend, Kafka's. And some have said maybe she made it up, though it's entirely possible, but seems somewhat unlikely because of Kafka's tendency to go to parks and whatnot. And she actually ended up hooking up with, I forget, like a German communist at the time, and the Gestapo had raided their apartment in the 30s and actually confiscated a lot of Kafka's stuff. So it's very, very possible that any record of those letters would have been confiscated by the Nazis, and they were kind of book burners, so they burn a lot of shit. And that may have eliminated all record. To me, it doesn't really matter on some level, I guess, 100 years later, whether the story is 100% true or a partial fabrication, which is probably closer to the truth, that Dora, who clearly loved Franz Kafka, may have embellished the story some. My hunch is he went to the park, there was a little girl who lost a doll, came back, told his girlfriend, hey, this kid lost a doll, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a little letter. I'm going to meet her again tomorrow, just to say that her doll didn't get lost. It had to go on an adventure. And the rest is sort of made up. But what strikes me more is the idea of the line that he supposedly wrote, everything you love will probably be lost, but in the end, love will return in another way, is kind of the thought process of you have to embrace change. It's inevitable for growth, right? And embrace change. It's required for growth. And you can shift pain. You can shift pain into wonder and love, but it's up to us, up to you, up to me, to consciously and intentionally create that connection, right? It's just inevitable for growth. Anyway, I just kind of thought it was an interesting story. I don't 100% believe it's entirely true, but I want to, and I guess that's all that matters, because it creates that sense of wonder that a guy would do something like that for some kid he didn't even know. Anyway, just a short story about Franz Kafka that I thought was kind of fun and I wanted to share with you. In this world, when you can be anything you want, you be kind, you be humble, you be forgiving, and we'll see you next time. Bye.